Hannah's scream echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls like it belonged to someone else. She clutched Mark's arm, trembling so hard she nearly dropped her flashlight. "We're leaving," she said, her voice sharp and cracking. "Right now. I don't care what anyone says." "Wait," Emily cut in, though her own voice shook. "We don't even know what we saw. It could have been." "What?" Kyle snapped, his face pale and damp with sweat. "A hand coming out of the ceiling, Emily. You gonna tell me that's normal?" They all turned toward the front door. It was only 20 feet away. The moonlight outside glimmered faintly through the glass panes. Freedom was right there. But when Mark tried the handle, it didn't budge. He twisted, shoved his shoulder against it, even kicked the frame. Nothing. The wood groaned, but the door didn't open. "It stuck," he muttered, panic edging into his voice. Kyle shoved him aside and tried for himself. He yanked until his hands were raw, but it was no use. The door was as solid as a vault. "Locked from the outside?" Hannah whispered, her eyes darting. Emily shook her head slowly. "No. It's not locked. It doesn't want to open." They stared at her. No one wanted to admit she might be right. Then came the footsteps. Soft at first, like bare feet padding along wooden boards. From upstairs. From the hallway above the children's room. The creak of weight shifting slowly, deliberately. "Someone's here," Mark whispered, his jaw tight. "Impossible," Emily said, though she didn't sound convinced. "This place is empty." A child's laughter cut her off. High-pitched. Playful. It drifted down the staircase, sharp as glass in the silence. Every hair on Kyle's arm stood on end. "That's it. I'm not staying here." He bolted toward the back of the house, flashlight beam jerking wildly as he ran. The others shouted after him, but he didn't stop. Seconds later, his scream tore through the dark. Emily sprinted after him, her camera bouncing against her chest. The others followed, their flashlights slicing through the gloom. They found Kyle in the kitchen. He was standing in front of the pantry door, frozen in place, his face ghost white. "What is it?" Emily demanded, breathless. Kyle pointed. His hand shook violently. The pantry door was slightly open, just enough to see inside. Emily nudged it with her flashlight beam, and her stomach dropped. Inside, stacked neatly on the shelves where canned food should have been, were bones. Dozens of small, pale bones. Some still with scraps of rotting flesh clinging to them. Tiny skulls balanced on the top shelf, hollow eye sockets staring blankly outward. "Animal bones," Mark said quickly, his voice thin. "It has to be animals." Not. But Emily raised the camera, zoomed in, and whispered what they all already knew. "They're not animals." Kyle retched into the sink. Hannah covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then the pantry door slammed shut with a deafening crack, rattling the walls. And from upstairs, the laughter came again. Louder this time. But it wasn't just laughter anymore. It was joined by a voice. Low. Male. Measured. "You shouldn't be here." The Carter family was the kind of family you'd expect to see on the cover of a 1950s magazine ad. James Carter, a hard-working father in his late 40s, always kept a neat lawn and wore a smile that never quite reached his tired eyes. His wife, Margaret, seemed to glide through life with her perfect posture and soft, almost too gentle voice. Their two children, Lily, age 10, and Daniel, age 7, were rarely seen outside except when heading to school, their small figures pressed close to each other, as if the world outside their home felt unsafe. They lived in a house at the very end of Renfield Street, a place locals had always found different. It wasn't that the house was old or crumbling, it was kept in perfect condition, paint always fresh, curtains drawn just so, but neighbors swore they'd hear things at night, strange humming, rhythmic tapping against the windows, even voices carried on the wind when no one was outside. For years, people whispered about the Carters but never dared confront them. They were polite, after all, never unfriendly. And yet something about them didn't feel right. On a chilly October evening in 1983, the Carter family disappeared. No warning, no note, no sign of struggle. The house was left exactly as it always was, curtains perfectly straight, lawn freshly trimmed, dinner still sitting on the table. The chicken was carved, the vegetables neatly placed on plates. Glasses of water half full. It was as if they had all stood up mid-bite and walked out into the night. The police came. They searched the house, the yard, the woods behind the property. Nothing. No footprints, no forced entry, no clues. Within weeks, the case went cold, but the story spread through Renfield like wildfire. Some neighbors swore that on the night of their disappearance, they'd seen the Carter house glowing faintly, a pale bluish light spilling out from the windows. Others said they heard the sound of children giggling, followed by a long, metallic screech. But the most chilling part. When investigators searched Lily and Daniel's shared bedroom, they found something scratched into the underside of the children's wooden bunk bed. The words were messy, carved in uneven lines as if done in haste, but the message was clear. We are not alone in this house. And just like that, the story of the missing Carter family became a ghost tale whispered in hushed tones by teenagers daring each other to walk past the property at night. The house still stands there, empty, perfectly preserved, as if waiting for them to return. But some say the Carters never left at all. The voice was so clear, so deliberate, that for a moment they all thought someone real had broken in. Mark stepped in front of Emily instinctively, his flashlight sweeping the staircase. The beam caught nothing but peeling wallpaper and dust drifting in the air. "Who's there?" he barked, his voice trembling despite his attempt to sound firm. "Show yourself." Silence followed. Heavy. Smothering. Then, one by one, the upstairs lights flickered on. First the hallway, then the master bedroom, then the children's room. The bulbs glowed a sickly yellow, far too bright for their age, humming with an electric buzz that seemed to drill into their skulls. Emily's hands shook as she raised the camera. "No power's been connected here for years," she whispered. The sound of shuffling feet followed. Not hurried, not panicked, calm, steady. Like someone pacing. Mark swallowed hard. "Stay here," he said, though his own fear betrayed him. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step groaning beneath his weight. The others followed despite his order, drawn by the oppressive silence that made standing still feel impossible. At the top of the stairs, the air was colder. The walls looked different too, darker, stained with patches that hadn't been there moments before. Smears of brown-red dragged along the wallpaper in long, jagged lines, like something, or someone, had been pulled down the hall. They followed the trail to the children's room. The door was wide open. Inside, the bunk bed stood waiting in the corner, but the room was no longer frozen in time. The bed sheets were rumpled as though recently slept in. Toys that had been carefully stacked against the wall were scattered across the floor. And in the middle of the rug sat a small tea set. 2 cups. Both filled with something dark and thick. Lily's porcelain doll sat in one of the chairs, her cracked face smiling as if she were mid-conversation. The other chair was empty, waiting. Kyle muttered a prayer under his breath. We shouldn't be here." Emily raised her camera. "This is proof," she whispered, as if saying it aloud might steady her nerves. The moment the lens focused on the tea set, both cups rattled violently, liquid sloshing over the edges. And then, from the corner of the room, came a sound none of them would ever forget. The sound of a child breathing. Not normal breathing, but ragged, wet, like lungs filling with water. The flashlight beam snapped toward the noise. And there she was. A little girl, no older than 10, standing in the shadows. Her nightgown clung to her thin frame, drenched as though she had just stepped out of a river. Her hair hung in dark clumps across her face. Her head tilted slowly, unnaturally, as she stared at them. "Lily," Hannah whispered, recognizing the photos she'd seen in old newspaper clippings. The girl's mouth twitched, pulling into a grotesque grin. Water dripped from her lips. "You came back," she said, her voice distorted, layered, as though many children spoke at once. Emily's blood ran cold. We're not." The lights above them exploded, showering the room in glass. Darkness swallowed them whole. And in that suffocating black, the child's laughter returned, joined now by dozens of voices, whispering in unison, so close it felt like they were speaking directly into their ears. "Stay. Stay with us. Forever." The whispers swarmed around them like insects, brushing against their ears, their skin, their very thoughts. Emily gripped her camera tighter, though the viewfinder showed nothing but static. Her flashlight flickered, then died completely, leaving only the faint glow of Hannah's trembling beam. "Stay calm," Emily said, though her voice cracked. "They're trying to scare us. That's all." But the air grew heavy, almost liquid, pressing against their lungs until every breath burned. Mark coughed violently, his chest heaving. Kyle staggered to the wall, pounding on it in desperation. "This house, it's alive," he gasped. "It doesn't want us to leave." The shadows thickened, curling along the floor like smoke. Shapes took form within them, small figures darting just out of sight. Children. Dozens of them. Their laughter rose and fell in sickening waves, weaving through the walls, the ceiling, the floor. And then, all at once, silence. The group froze. From the hallway came a slow, deliberate creak. A tall figure stepped into view. He wore a suit. His hair was neatly combed, his shoes polished, as though he had just stepped out of 1983. But his face was wrong. It was James Carter, the father, yet his skin sagged like wet paper, his eyes clouded, his jaw twitching unnaturally as if held in place by invisible strings. "Welcome home," he said in a low, gravelly tone. Hannah let out a choked sob. "It's him, oh my God, it's him." Behind him, another figure appeared. Margaret Carter. Her once perfect posture now bent and broken, her neck at a sickening angle. She smiled, teeth too sharp, lips torn and bleeding. And then the children followed, Lily and Daniel. But they didn't look like the photographs anymore. Their eyes were black pits, their skin pale and stretched, their small hands clutching each other like chains. Emily's mind raced. They never left. They've been here the whole time. But what are they now? The Carter family stepped into the children's bedroom, their movements jerky, like puppets on strings. Mark tried to shield the others, his voice shaking. "What do you want from us?" James Carter tilted his head. His jaw cracked as he spoke. "You came into our home. You sat at our table. You heard our children." He paused. His clouded eyes locked onto Emily. "Now you will stay. You will become us." The shadows surged forward, wrapping around their legs, pulling them toward the Carters. Hannah screamed as icy tendrils snaked up her body, constricting her chest. Kyle thrashed wildly, his flashlight clattering to the floor. Emily fought to keep hold of the camera, raising it like a weapon. "No," she shouted. "We're not yours. We don't belong here." But the house disagreed. The walls pulsed. The floorboards buckled. Every window slammed shut with a thunderous crack. And the Carters began to sing. A soft, haunting lullaby. The same tune neighbors had once heard faintly drifting from the house late at night. Only now it was warped, discordant, layered with dozens of other voices joining in, a choir of the damned. As the melody wrapped around them, Emily felt her strength draining, her will crumbling. The urge to surrender, to give in, nearly overwhelmed her. But somewhere beneath the cacophony, she heard something else. A voice. Small. Desperate. It was Lily. Not the twisted version before her, but the voice of a scared little girl. "Help us, please, set us free." Emily's eyes widened. The Carters weren't just monsters. They were prisoners. And the house was the jailer. The Carter family was the kind of family you'd expect to see on the cover of a 1950s magazine ad. James Carter, a hard-working father in his late 40s, always kept a neat lawn and wore a smile that never quite reached his tired eyes. His wife, Margaret, seemed to glide through life with her perfect posture and soft, almost too gentle voice. Their two children, Lily, age 10, and Daniel, age 7, were rarely seen outside except when heading to school, their small figures pressed close to each other, as if the world outside their home felt unsafe. They lived in a house at the very end of Renfield Street, a place locals had always found different. It wasn't that the house was old or crumbling, it was kept in perfect condition, paint always fresh, curtains drawn just so, but neighbors swore they'd hear things at night, strange humming, rhythmic tapping against the windows, even voices carried on the wind when no one was outside. For years, people whispered about the Carters but never dared confront them. They were polite, after all, never unfriendly. And yet something about them didn't feel right. On a chilly October evening in 1983, the Carter family disappeared. No warning, no note, no sign of struggle. The house was left exactly as it always was, curtains perfectly straight, lawn freshly trimmed, dinner still sitting on the table. The chicken was carved, the vegetables neatly placed on plates. Glasses of water half full. It was as if they had all stood up mid-bite and walked out into the night. The police came. They searched the house, the yard, the woods behind the property. Nothing. No footprints, no forced entry, no clues. Within weeks, the case went cold, but the story spread through Renfield like wildfire. Some neighbors swore that on the night of their disappearance, they'd seen the Carter house glowing faintly, a pale bluish light spilling out from the windows. Others said they heard the sound of children giggling, followed by a long, metallic screech. But the most chilling part. When investigators searched Lily and Daniel's shared bedroom, they found something scratched into the underside of the children's wooden bunk bed. The words were messy, carved in uneven lines as if done in haste, but the message was clear. "We are not alone in this house." And just like that, the story of the missing Carter family became a ghost tale whispered in hushed tones by teenagers daring each other to walk past the property at night. The house still stands there, empty, perfectly preserved, as if waiting for them to return. But some say the Carters never left at all. The lullaby grew louder, rattling in their bones, twisting their thoughts. Emily staggered forward, clutching her head as if the sound might split her skull. Hannah had collapsed to her knees, whispering prayers. Mark swung his fists uselessly at the shadows while Kyle pounded at the locked door until his knuckles bled. The Carter family stood before them, unmoving, their mouths open wide as the lullaby spilled out like poison. Their eyes glowed faintly now, empty and cold. Emily's grip on the camera weakened. She wanted to let it go. She wanted to sink into the song, to close her eyes and become part of the house. That was what it wanted, surrender. And then, again, Lily's voice. "Please, set us free." Emily forced her eyes open. She looked past the monstrous facade of the Carter family, past their hollow eyes and broken bodies. And she saw them, not the puppets, but the memories of a family. Smiling in photographs. A father with his arm around his wife. A mother brushing her daughter's hair. A little boy clutching his sister's hand. They weren't monsters. They were trapped. "Listen to me," Emily shouted over the song, her voice cracking. "You don't have to keep us. You don't have to keep anyone. This house is feeding on you, don't let it." The Carters twitched, their smiles faltering. For just a moment, the song wavered. The house roared in anger. The walls shook violently, plaster raining down from the ceiling. The shadows surged again, slamming Emily against the wall, knocking the breath out of her lungs. She fumbled with her camera, flipping the night vision on. Through the screen she saw something she hadn't seen before. Carved into the floorboards beneath their feet was a symbol, glowing faintly, a circle of jagged lines, pulsing with the same rhythm as the house itself. The heart of it all. Emily crawled toward it, every muscle screaming. The shadows tore at her skin, ripping strands of hair, clawing at her face. Still, she reached the circle. "Emily!" Mark shouted, trying to fight his way toward her, but the shadows dragged him back. Emily lifted the camera high above her head, then brought it crashing down onto the glowing symbol. The lens shattered, sparks flying. The circle hissed, then burned with sudden fire. The house shrieked. A sound not human, not earthly. The walls split, the floorboards cracked wide open, black smoke pouring out like blood. The Carter family screamed, not in malice, but in release. Their twisted bodies crumbled into ash, carried away by the fire. Lily's voice whispered one last time. "Thank you." And then they were gone. The shadows dissolved, retreating into nothingness. The lullaby silenced. The air lightened, and for the first time, Emily could breathe without pain. The house groaned, splintering as if its very foundation was collapsing. "Out!" Emily screamed, grabbing Hannah and dragging her toward the front door. Mark and Kyle stumbled behind. The door, once sealed shut, burst open with a deafening crack, and they threw themselves into the night. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of the road, the burning house collapsing behind them in a storm of flame and ash. They stood in silence, gasping for breath, their bodies shaking, their clothes torn. None of them spoke. Emily stared at the ruins. Somewhere deep inside, she felt the Carter family had finally found peace. But she also knew something else. The house was gone. But the evil that had built it, the hunger that had fed it, was older, deeper, and far from finished. And it had seen her.